All right, good day everyone. Thank you again for joining, for those that have been with us for a few minutes now, and those that are just joining in here. We're just getting started now. So welcome to our webcast. Very exciting time for us in terms of the ServiceTeam family and the growth of the products within the ServiceTeam family here at Provence. And of course, we're here to talk to you about our IT asset management product today. So without further ado, let's get started. First, a few housekeeping items. You are muted in this format. So if you have questions, use the dashboard or the control for GoToWebinar on your screen, and you can submit questions through the question box there, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go here. We should have time at the end as well for some Q&A, and if not, submit the questions or email us, and we'll be happy to respond to you quickly for sure. Also, you can see that we're going to use video today, and if you don't like that, you can minimize or move it around or whatever, and as you like. But just hoping to let you know that we're real here and see us live. So joining me, without further ado, is Brian Field, and so Brian is the technical brains of our duo here today, and will be walking us through a demo of the ServiceTeam ITAM product, and also a little bit of ITSM as well in there, just for good measure. And then of course I'm Greg Singleton, and I'm responsible for sales and marketing here at Provence. So again, welcome everybody to the webcast, and we are recording this as well, so that if you later on wish to share this with colleagues or others, or watch it again, our marketing team will fire that out to you, and you'll have access to it within the next day or so. Okay, so let's get going here. So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time providing a bit of context around the topic here, and then Brian's going to take over and walk us through a demo, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up at the end with some Q&A. But I thought it was important to mention to folks that don't know Provence well or don't know our history, that actually this year we're celebrating our 25th year in business. And so it's been a very good run for Provence. The last 11 or 12 years of that has been with Provence building out products on Microsoft platform. So we started building out on the System Center Service Manager product, or the System Center platform. In 2016, we released our products that are built in Dynamics for both IT service management and asset management. And then more recently, in the last year and a half or so, the ServiceTeam product family has taken light, and we now have ServiceTeam for ITSM and now ITAM, of course. And that's all built natively in the Power Platform and in Power Apps. So we're continuing to invest and evolve and build off of our extensive experience in IT asset management and IT service management, but on the Microsoft platform. And Microsoft continues to invest in underpinning technologies that really support independent software vendors like Provence in the building out of these types of products. So today we view ourselves as the most Microsoft-centric, IT service management, IT asset management products available in the market. And we've made that decision obviously consciously, one, because we have such a great relationship with Microsoft at multiple different levels, but because Microsoft's built a platform that the industry now is recognizing as a best of platform or best of suite. And the billions of dollars that Microsoft invests in things like Power Platform and Power Apps and Power BI and Power Automate and all the kind of the Power platform technologies has provided a foundation that we as an independent software vendor can build on and really take our expertise and experience and build that into compelling products. Furthermore, we're not deploying on Provence infrastructure. We don't manage customers' data. We don't host customer data in our own cloud or on our own Azure environment or anything like that. Because we're built in the Power Platform, or because we can deploy in Dynamics, for example, we're deploying on Microsoft's cloud, in Microsoft's Azure cloud, the most global, scalable, flexible, secure cloud in the industry. And our customers can depend on that quality and that again, that scalability and security and stuff that Microsoft provides. So again, we're not managing data, we're not managing environments. It's all deployed in your environments on a Microsoft platform in a Microsoft data center managed by Microsoft. And at the end of the day, what we do is we're able to manifest products on the platform and leveraging all the services that Microsoft provides that leverage our ITSM and our asset management experience and of course embed best practices and so on both into the products and in terms of the services that we bring to our customers. Okay, so it's a fundamental tenet, if you will, of what we do as a company, and that is building out on the Microsoft platform. We think the best platform or the best of suite technology, but this is a fundamental, aspect of our capability, in that we sit on top of either the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, which is essentially the same thing, but can be deployed in different environments across Dynamics and across the Power Platform. Okay, good. So obviously, one of the things we're here to do today is talk about ServiceTeam IT Asset Management. It's the next product, if you will, in the ServiceTeam family of products that we're releasing to market. So over the last couple of years, we've been evolving. It's not a reinvention, if you will. It's an evolution of our product lineup, from the sort of core Dynamics platform and into Power Apps and leveraging Power Apps and what that does for us. And of course, asset management is a key pillar in the product sets that we bring to market. So we're bringing very, very, a lot of years of experience around IT asset management. But the capability is driven by an understanding that it's not just about tracking assets or knowing what your inventory is. Asset management in large measure is successful or not successful based on how you apply principles of process and people to process and to the lifecycle management of your assets. So it's connecting not only what you have, where it is, but how does it connect to contracts? How does it connect to other governance requirements that you may have in your business? How does it connect to the financial side of the business? How does it connect to the organizational side? And pulling all that all together as part of a lifecycle management. So we have a lot of customers that started out doing asset management in spreadsheets. We all know how that turns out, which is not very well. And what we're doing is trying to bring a lot more structure and a lot more process to the practice of asset management. And we do it not only well in the product, but also we back that up with experience and with best practices and processes that are predefined to help you understand how to employ or how to deploy a proper asset management program. And Brian will speak to that a little bit as he gets into the demo today. And Brian's done probably thousands of these deployments over his career with Provence and prior to Provence. So one of the things that we've seen in the last few years now, of course, and it's hard not to talk about COVID and the pandemic and what that's meant to organizations, but fundamentally it reawakened interest in conversations around IT asset management when a bunch of assets started disappearing to home offices and different places, and we know their customers are still trying to track down assets that have gone missing or they can't find or whatever. But it created quite a challenge for IT to be able to kind of understand, well, how do we manage this? Do we have sufficient assets? Where are things now? How do we manage this from a risk perspective, from a governance perspective? How do we ensure people have the right assets at the right time in the right place, access to the right applications? All of that complexity happened super, super quick, as we all know, and continues to do so. Here at Provence, we still have we have a hybrid work model. It's 2 days a week in the office for most employees, and the rest work from home that time. And other than our remote employees who work from home, typically full time. And so we're typical of that hybrid environment. And it is a challenge sometimes to understand what people have and who needs what and so on. And asset management programs help bring a process and some discipline around managing that, particularly from a risk perspective. Knowing who has what and where it is and all that sort of thing is quite important. So when we talk about why businesses care about asset management, I've kind of touched on the security, the risk mitigation, business continuity, inventory, ownership, location, movement, all that sort of thing. That's bread and butter IT asset management, right? And to do it well, you need proper systems and processes in place. And then you get into things like the lifecycle management and reporting and planning for inventory and purchases and refresh cycles of assets, and which gets more into the IT strategy and planning for assets. Do we have the right mix of assets? Do we have the right types of assets? Are we optimizing what we have on hand and not overbuying, that sort of thing. And then of course we have a lot of customers, say in financial services or healthcare, places like that, where things like regulatory requirements dictate some of the processes that need to be in place for asset management. So we can support that as well. So those are just some of the reasons why organizations care about asset management. But why ServiceTeam IT Asset Management? Why Provence and our IT Asset Management capabilities? Well, one is what I've already talked about. We have 25 years plus now of experience around deploying IT asset management for organizations, both large and small, all over the world. And we know what works and we know what doesn't work, and we know what success is and we know what success is not. And hopefully for our customers, we can bring a degree of that expertise to the table with our best practices and so on to help them be successful, quickly and see quick wins. But we also believe that the platform is a secret weapon for us as well. It's the leading no-code, low-code platform, meaning the Power Platform and Power Apps. You're doing configuration, you're not doing coding in the application. The Microsoft Cloud in terms of where we get deployed. So again, bringing a degree of not only scalability and security, but reliability to our product and in terms of how it gets deployed. For organizations that worry about data residency and things like that, we have that covered because you're deploying in a Microsoft tenant that's either in your country or at least acceptable regionally. Reporting, dashboards, automation, we have barcode, and lastly, one that we know from our ITSM experience, and that's leveraging existing skill sets that you have around Microsoft technologies. So if you use Dynamics today, for example, or if you're using Power Apps or using other Microsoft technologies, you generally have, at least on the technical side, an understanding of how these applications work, how you configure them, how you configure, security and roles and things like that within the environments, and that applies to Provence's products as well. So the interface is the same, the way you interact is the same, the way you deploy it is the same, the way you administrate it is the same, and that can be a gain for organizations in terms of efficiency and not having to skill up on other sort of siloed applications or other unique skill sets for other applications. And then, of course, there's the whole story around what we call better together, IT service management and IT asset management. And as you know, and as I've talked about already, ServiceTeam and what we do, asset management and the service management can exist separately or independently of each other. Of course, we have lots of customers that use our ITAM products and don't use our ITSM products, but there's a lot of power in when they're combined together. And the natural alignment, and many of you will understand this, I'm sure, right? There's a natural alignment between service management and asset management. There's an opportunity here to manage risk and improve processes and visibility, enhance reporting of assets, but it's where the two come together, where the asset and the issues are connected, right? So at the service desk, a service desk agent can see, well, what asset does this user have? Is it under warranty? When was it last discovered, or has it has it not been discovered for a while through things like Intune or System Center Configuration Manager type data? Connecting it to business processes, for example, onboarding or a leaver request, right? When you have an employee who's no longer with the organization, there's a requirement to recover assets typically, right? Well, what does that user have? Do we know what they have? What hardware do they have? What software applications? What applications do they have access to? What has to be closed off, etc. All of that can now be surfaced up to the service desk or to IT, depending on who manages your assets. But at that level, so it brings a degree of efficiency, visibility, and control over the environment. And same with portals, right? Tying into portals to support requests for hardwares and leveraging things like automation templates and different types of automation to help streamline and make that process more efficient. And before I turn over to Brian, Microsoft uses us, and we're very fortunate to have Microsoft as a customer of Provence, both for our ITSM and our ITAM products, and certainly Microsoft Global Delivery, which is one of the organizations with Microsoft that uses Provence. This is very much the story they have, where they needed to be able to connect the dots between the assets, where those assets were, and to the service management platform, so that they had greater clarity and reporting about what's happening. And it was very, on the surface simple, but hard to do in practice. And we help pull those two worlds together for them. And thankfully, again, we have them as a customer. Okay, You can read more about that if you'd like on our website. By the way, we have a case study up on our website if you go there under the resources section. Okay, I'm gonna pause here, and we're gonna switch over to Brian, we're gonna change screens a little bit. So apologize for the little bit of a shift back and forth here. But Brian, why don't you make what I just talked about real for our audience today?
All right, I will try to do that.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, Craig, if you could just confirm you can see my desktop now.
Yeah, you can see your screen. If you like, you can even switch your camera on and let everybody see what you're looking at.
Oh, I don't know. I'll go ahead. All right.
All right.
Good to go.
Over to you.
All right, sounds good. So as Greg mentioned, what I'm going to do here today is show you how within the application you can manage your ITAM program from that life cycle, from that contractual, from that financial, from that assignment perspective, using ServiceTeam. And we're going to look at towards the end also a view where you can get some benefits from leveraging Provence ITSM or ServiceTeam ITSM and asset management to gain some efficiencies and to really now provide some capability and some power to not only your service organization, but also to affect your asset managers and your asset management processes as well. So without further ado, let me just start by showing you what I typically like to show in demonstrations is a dashboard. And because this gives me the opportunity to talk about a lot of the things that I led with, for example, the life cycle status. So very traditional ITAM, where I can now see where things are received or installed or stored or disposed or whatever they might be here as you're going through. So very easy to do. If I want to pop this out, I can view the records and then I'm going to show you some other views here as well, but be able to pop that data out now and be able to filter on this. Perhaps I'm looking at that onboarding process, and I want to look for assets that are stored very easily, right? So I can filter on the fact that an item is stored. So very easy to do as part of that overall service request or work order fulfillment process to be able to determine if I have something in inventory. Very spreadsheet like, despite the fact that Greg mentioned people are using spreadsheet, that doesn't work very well, but we have that same sort of filtering capability here on the dashboards. A couple of other things that we try to help with here as well is, as I browse this dashboard, is looking at the age of your inventory. Very important from a lot of different perspectives. From a technology perspective, we want to make sure that the devices that are deployed are appropriate for what we're trying to do in the business, that they'll support the applications that we need, etc. That we have a plan for refresh, and we start looking at the financial implications of refresh planning and to understand how much I'm going to need or what I'm going to need 6 months or a year into the future as I'm looking at my refresh program. So very simple here. We can show you by age. This is in numbers of months. The age of my desktop inventory. If I hover over the blue bars, if you will, I can see there's a large percentage of my desktops which are probably now beyond their useful life, and I need to start to consider what I'm going to do with those assets and how I'm going to replace and then replenish inventory. If I scroll down, a couple of other things that I like to show here that are not always obvious in different ways to help manage and understand how your assets are being used within the organization. we provide a couple of attributes. One is called designated use. So very simply, is this a production machine? Is this part of a loaner pool? And if so, if it's a loaner request, what do I have that's available in inventory? And I can, drill down on this chart like I did a little bit earlier, and now understand how I might be able to fulfill a request for something that's needed on a short-term basis. Or I might want to look at readiness status as well. So it is, think of this as a little bit of a color commentary on the install, or I'm sorry, the life cycle status, right? So the best example is I'm looking at the items that are stored, things that I have in my stock room, my warehouse, wherever they might be, but that might not be enough, right? I might need to know that, hey, it's stored and it's ready for redeployment, so it's available. Or it's stored, but it's being used for parts, or it's in repair, or on legal hold. So a little bit more information that you can gather to really understand the exact status of the device, rather than just the very traditional ITAM-oriented statuses. Now, if I look at the assets in a little bit more detail, and one of the things that I want to point out, and it goes to the point Greg was making about the response to COVID, and the fact that items tend to now be distributed out to people's homes, or certainly not in offices in many cases. Like in mine, you can probably see from my background, I work from home and have done so exclusively for a long time. But now, how do I manage these assets? All right, how do I know that they're still out there and Brian hasn't walked away with them? So one thing you can do in combination with a discovery tool, which we have available out of the box with Azure Active Directory or System Center Configuration Manager, is now, hey, show me the assets that haven't been reporting in the last week, right? So these might now be red flags, right? It's a very simple query. We're capturing the last discovered date through those connectors, and then be able to do a very simple view like this one to understand that something, again, it hasn't reported in 30 days or 60 days, which is now a super red flag. Something happened to it. Did a process break? Did that person leave and we didn't update the records appropriately? Or the worst case scenario is that machine is now locked and we really have no way to be able to get access to it. So using the combination of your asset management program, your technology tools like your discovery tools, understanding who the current assignee is and what they have, what that asset is all about. Now I can begin to get a little bit more control over my inventory of assets. Again, particularly deployed to remote locations that I won't be able to visit on a routine basis, and I'm really counting on the fact that people are using them in the appropriate way. So let's go ahead and have a look then at an asset in a little bit more detail. So we want to make this as easy as possible for people to use, right? To help manage. And one of the things that we've done here is a visual indicators to identify the status. So very simple process, right? So if as this asset is moving through its life cycle, normally based upon experience, customers will start to track items either when they're shipped, meaning I have an advanced shipping notice from my vendor. I buy a lot of information from vendor A, or a lot of assets from vendor A, and they'll send me an advanced shipping notice. I can process those, automatically create an asset, and then use that to my advantage as they start to then show up in my warehouse or my loading dock or my receiving location. I'll have a built-in validation process. All right, you told me you had shipped to me serial number XYZ123, have I now received that? And if not, why not? Is that just a pending order? Did you send me a partial shipment? What's going on? I need to be able to understand, what's changed here based upon what you originally said you were going to provide to me. So again, very simple. I would just click the button, update the status, and off I go. Now, there are other options as well. We have a barcode app that you can choose to use, and as items are received, primarily in small lots, right? You don't want to scan 200 assets, but you want to use imports to do those. But maybe as they're received, in smaller lots, you indicate that I have it. It's now been assigned or going to be assigned to an individual. Its status has changed. Those sorts of things now we can capture through the barcode app to help you, manage that inventory in a streamlined way. So on the asset, we talked a little bit earlier about the life cycle status, which we've discussed, but now assignment. Now assignment can be much more than just assigned to an individual, which we have here, right? But it could be assigned to depending upon the nature of your business. Maybe this account, now this represents an external customer, but this could also represent an internal organizational element like HR or IT or legal, right? So there's that nature of the assignment to that account level, if you will, or to a physical location. Maybe for a laptop that's mobile, maybe that's not all that important necessarily. But if you're tracking servers and you have the servers in a data center, that won't change very often, now, I might want to specify that, and I might even want to provide some additional details over and above the city or the building or the floor, which you can do. But maybe I've had some customers over the years do things like, racks in the data center. So it's very flexible. You can build that hierarchy as you're going through. If you have bundles of assets, now you may set those up as well. So let's say you have, and a great example from experience that I have is maybe you have, a laptop or a laptop and let's say cameras and fingerprint devices and things like that you work, you're working for a police department. And then you have a vehicle that, and let's just, for the sake of argument, select that as the vehicle. Now I can say, all right, VIN number 123456 has a tough book. It has, multiple cameras on each side of the vehicle. It has an installed fingerprint reader. It might even have some other mobile communication devices. So I can bundle all of those together. That's the point, or one use case for the use of a parent asset. Now, talked a little bit about the discovery tool. So that comes into play here as well. We have the asset from that straight ITAM perspective, very traditional ITAM perspective. And you can see some.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. Just coincidentally, there was a question that came in about installing a client on managed devices. So I did respond in the chat, but you may want to comment on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it?
Install a client on the managed devices. Well, we don't have ourselves a client. We rely on third-party software like System Center Configuration Manager, if you have that very specifically, or Azure Intune, again as an item. Those are the two that we currently have out of the box. Now you may use any discovery agent that you have, and we can integrate with those as well. So nothing that comes with the service team requires installation at the client level. Again, we just leverage third-party products. All right, and that third-party product will the way this works is we have our asset management record from the financial and agreement perspective, assignment perspective, life cycle perspective. But then we have that data that you can get from your discovery tools. And we marry those together. And we do that by the technology just simply matches on serial number, which is the unique identifier. And what we want to bring in here now is some of the discovery data that you can get from those tools. What's the processor count? Who's the primary user? What OS is installed? Things like that. If it's a mobile device, what's the IMEI and the SIM and the phone number? If we're talking about an integration with, let's say, an Intune, something like that. So it's meant to bring together this device to CI, and the integrations we have are meant to bring together that technical or more tactical data that service technicians can use, that asset managers can use to really understand the nature of the items that are out there when they're looking at upgrades or refresh or processes like that, or even when they're trying to reconcile who we think the assignee is based upon our ITAM processes versus what our discovery or agents and tools are telling us is the assignee. So we have some opportunities to leverage the data to do the reconciliation and to identify perhaps breaks in the in the process. So let's look at the financial tab here for a moment. Pretty straightforward. We have the ability here to understand the cost center that was used, or funding code, or general ledger code, whatever your terminology might be, that was used to procure the item. Or let's say you're doing showback or chargeback. Maybe this represents the current cost center where those dollars would be applied, right? Or track how much you paid for it, or who you purchased it from, or who what was your PO number or your PO that was cut in order to be able to procure this particular asset. So that sort of information. Then we have this other concept called a cost event. So here, what I could do over the life of an asset, let's say this is something like add component, and I want to be able to track those one-off expenditures that I might have as part of the life of the part of the life of the asset. So maybe I'm spending $500 to purchase a customer purchase an item on a specific day, and it's in order to buy again a hard drive or some piece that I want to add to this. So hard disk purchase, something like that, and be able to then capture that information, right? So I can start to understand now over the life of the asset what I'm spending. Or going back to that showback or chargeback model, this could become month over month or quarter over quarter. Here's where we capture then in an automated way the $200 chargeback per month to the organization for all of the services that are provided as a result of the use of this particular asset. So we can do that here as well. Agreements. So here we have warranty data, which we can see here. We can add existing contracts as well. So if I were to go ahead and I wanted to add a contract, I could do that here. The contracts that we have associated would include things like maintenance contracts. It would include things like lease agreements and lease schedules, perhaps disposal contracts, all of those items allowing you to be able to group your assets together, understand over the course of time how how you might be able to get support for those items, how at the time of renewal for the contract, you can decide which assets need to continue under coverage for that. So lots of different things that you can do, and multiple contracts that can be applied here to the asset itself. Oh, one of the other areas here that I want to talk about briefly is some key dates. Now, you've seen dates going through here with the warranty dates, and we capture the date that the item was received, and be able to calculate automatically how old the asset is, or how we can set the refresh target date based upon refresh cycles that might be related to the make and the model. So we can do that here, or we could add something new. So here, and this kind of gives you the ability to set up and use dates that you may or may not use all the time. And you don't necessarily have to add a field to be able to capture it. You add data. So I could very specifically say, hey, I added this to a contract on a certain date, or I ordered this asset for the record, on September 1. Things of that nature, and be able to capture that information as we're going forward without actually having to extend the database with another field. Now, you may choose to do that anyway, depending upon the nature of the date that you want and how you're going to use it, how you want to report on it, how do you want to visualize it. There are good reasons to add additional date attributes here as well, and you can. It's all configurable and available for you to adjust as necessary. On the Insights tab, excuse me, I really like to show this one because for those of you who've used the platform before, either Dynamics or the Power Platform, you'll know that there's an audit history. And you'll also probably know that it can be somewhat difficult to really be able to get that data out, to look at it in a clean and concise way, and to be able to use it for perhaps input into other reporting items or other processes. So what we've done is we've created this concept of an insight, where now I have all of those very traditional updates that you can see. I know when something's changed. For example, if I've changed the name of the computer, I can see when that happened and be able to capture that information as I'm going forward. So a great way to get that audit history, be able to report on it, find on it, when did the assignees change, things of that nature. And then as needed, I can export these directly out to Excel if I want to do that, or maybe I'd use a Power BI report as well in certain scenarios to get a sense of what's been happening with an individual asset. Now, Greg had mentioned there's also here an opportunity to leverage the tool to help with processes like onboarding or offboarding. And I mentioned the one, I think, about when you're onboarding somebody, you're looking for, or that was actually in the case of a loaner pool, but the concept is the same, where I would get a request for a new employee through my ITSM application, and which means I need to deploy a computer. I go look at the ones that are currently available, and I can fulfill from inventory, hopefully. Or on the onboarding example, or offboarding, pardon me, if I wanted to see what an individual has, I can simply go to that contact record, get a lot of the information on that individual, then be able to look at, okay, what hardware is currently owned by that person. If there are any software assignments, can look at those as well. And I can retrieve those assignments, right? There's nothing physical but I understand what was deployed to them, and now I'm going to have one more license available to me to deploy to somebody else. But in the case of the assets, these are physical assets that I want to get back when Alex is leaving. So I have a great and easy way to be able to see that list of assets, and when Alex is walking out the door, to ensure that I have recouped everything that we deployed to her. So let's have a look now at how this can integrate with an ITSM process, and then how we can affect change automatically as a result of an ITSM ticket, and how we can update automatically the status of assets. So I've started, in the interest of time, I've started this new ticket for Alex, where she's going to need some hardware repaired. Brand new ticket. It's going to be a break fix type of incident. And I'm going to apply a ticket template here as well, which allows me to pre-populate some information, things like the category and subcategory. So kind of basic ITSM at this point. But where asset management comes into play, and what you can do. Now, I did modify our out-of-the-box ticket form to support this process, which would include the asset that we're going to swap. So let's make the assumption that Alex is calling in about her asset that we've been looking at, say, hey, it's something's wrong with it. We determine that through some troubleshooting steps or discussions with her, or maybe we even did a remote control session, those sorts of things, that I need to go ahead and I need to swap this for another asset. Now, what I can do here is, if I look for a very specific asset that I'm going to find, now it's going to give me a list of all of the assets that are available, right? I can filter this to show me those that are in storage, that are available for use, that I can choose from this particular list. And then, as you can see, I can filter on various aspects here as well. So I want that one. Will, as part of our repair process, we would rename the asset, or do whatever we would do there. So pretty straightforward process. Go ahead and save that ticket. Now, it's going to fill in everything that we need here. And as we now work this ticket through to its completion, and we're all done, and we have completed the swap, we're ready to close everything out, what I can now do here is, and I'm going to jump right to the end. We have the full ticket management process here, but I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say, hey, we're ready to close this. And I'm going to close it for a simple reason, that it was hardware repaired or hardware swapped, or whatever your data might be. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I've swapped with asset PD 0641, something like that, and confirm. So pretty simple process. I managed the ticket. Everything was done for me. But what's now happening in the background is we're going to affect change to the asset. So remember, Alex had this asset. It was assigned to her, and it was installed, and it was in use, etc. So what's happened now in the background? Whoops! If I do this correctly, I click on that asset and change my form, is what I really want to do. So now I can see, right, this is now stored, and the status, readiness status is in repair. And if I needed to change the physical location, I could do that as well as part of that process. And then, oh, by the way, Alex doesn't have that asset anymore, right? So I've affected change very simply to try to streamline not only the ITSM process, because now I don't have to have that person go in and say, geez, now I got to go up, say 2 assets. No, make sure your ticket's good. And then based upon rules of engagement, I can affect change automatically. So by contrast and comparison, now I can see that Alex is assigned to this, it's in use, it's installed, and I can look at my insights tab and be able to track, the fact that things have changed, like, I now know Alex has this, et cetera. It's moved around a little bit. So all of that happened very simply in the background and shows you the power of and the possibilities related to that integration or that tight integration between ITSM and ITAM. From experience, where ITAM tends to fall apart is in situations like I just described. People forget about it, right? They forget to go back to the office and update the asset inventory. Now poor Alex had 2 assets and she's going to try to check out, and there's 2 assets listed in her name, but she's only had 1 the entire time, right? It just tries to take that burden off of the technicians or the asset managers to make sure that that data is up to date. Yes, you want to validate that everything is good for sure, but here's an example where you can help that process, and you can try to overcome a perception so that sometimes, oh, it's my asset management tool just isn't doing the job. That's usually not the case. Even if somebody's transitioning from another tool to ServiceTeam and they say, our tool's terrible. Well, maybe there's part of that could be true, but oftentimes it's the process and being able to easily help automate the process where you're keeping your inventory as up to date as you possibly can. That's where the real value comes, and that's where you can say, hey, this is a really good tool, in keeping my inventory up to date through not only those manual processes, but also automated ones like I just demonstrated there.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Greg. Yeah.
I want to let you know you're down to your 2-minute warning here.
Yep. Well, that's good because that was the last thing. I was all done.
Okay. Just before I take over here, there was a question about the insights view you had up there, and the individual didn't notice that there was any indication of who changed the value.
Yeah. So full disclosure, in the version that I have, that is not working the way it's supposed to, but that would show the person who actually affected the change.
So yes. This is a demo environment.
Correct.
Okay, you got caught out on that one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, very attentive eye there, but yeah, that's that is corrected, and it would show you the user ID of the person, or actually it's the full name. It would have shown Brian Field here.
Yeah.
That's updated properly. Yep.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions, but I'll let's just go through here and I'll get to those in a second. Just wanted to close this off while we still have time here. So one of the obvious questions comes to licensing and all that sort of stuff. So just so we're clear, ServiceTeam IT Asset Management is available independently as a standalone application. So you don't necessarily need to have ServiceTeam ITSM to use the ITAM product. So they live independently of each other. And of course they are integrated. So for a lot of customers, they're licensing both at the same time because they do want to have that integrated experience or that capability. Also, the licensing is a bit unique in the market. If you're familiar with IT asset management tools, a lot of them are based on number of devices or managed devices or other scenarios like that. And we have a fairly simple model. It's based on the size of the organization, so the number of employees that our customer has. And we have these different tiers, and your salesperson that you're working with, or you can reach out to us directly through our info@provence.com to confirm pricing. But it starts at US dollars 5,000 per year, unlimited assets, unlimited number of asset managers as well as part of that. And the only thing you need from Microsoft can be as simple as a full Power Apps license, either a per app or per user license from Microsoft. So in most cases, we're actually quite an affordable IT asset management solution in the market as compared to what we see from others. Okay, I encourage you to reach out to your salesperson on that. Now, for existing customers, so at the beginning of this session, I talked about the Provence history and our Microsoft history over the last 11, 12 years, started in System Center. So we have a lot of customers that still use Provence ITAM for System Center Service Manager. I want to ensure if any of you are on this session or you're looking at this later, that we do have programs in place to help existing customers shift over or move to ServiceTeam ITAM. And there are some incentives in place as well to the end of 2022. So if you're either a Service Manager ITAM customer from Provence, or if you're even a Provence ITSM on Dynamics customer and you didn't license the ITAM capability, you're not licensed for it, I would be happy to talk to you about what incentives we have for existing customers that are available there, along with some upgrade services or transition services as well, if you're using one of the older products and you wish to move across. And it's a fairly efficient process for us and for you. And then of course for everyone else, we have free trials, we have deeper dive demos available. So if you want to talk to Brian or one of our other folks that live and breathe the technology and can walk you through the deep dive of the bits and how all the pieces fit together and work and so on, we're happy to do that with you as well. We'd love to talk to you and engage with you, understand your requirements, and go from there. Of course, we've got lots of information on our website, and through AppSource and places like that. But the best thing to do is just reach out to us through info@provence.com or through your salesperson if you're working with somebody, and ask your questions or engage us to have those deeper technical conversations with you. Okay, so with that, there are some questions here, Brian, so I'm just going to pop them out. There were some questions earlier. We have some MSPs on this session today. Mm-hmm. We know MSPs care a lot about data segregation between customers and the multi-tenancy of the environment and supporting those scenarios. So would you mind commenting on that?
Yeah, sure. So normally in an environment like that, and depending on what you want to do, right? Who needs access to what, but we leverage the full power of the security model that is provided by the platform. And that could include business units, which may represent your customers, if you need to segregate them in any way. Subordinate to that could be different teams that might be members of that business unit. So think of that as your support groups, but different ways to take advantage and leverage the platform security model. Security roles is another element of that. Who can see what, and who, if they can see it, can they update it? Those sorts of things. Or field level permissions is another one that potentially could come into play as well. So we are more than happy to take advantage of that security model to help with controlling access, visibility, and then permissions with respect to managing any record within the application, but assets in particular too.
Yeah, and this applies equally to the self-service portal, right?
Yeah, that's a little bit different security model. Yeah. That's done with web roles and table permissions. They're two separate things, but now we're talking about, from a portal perspective, usually limiting things by the individual who's logged in, or depending what you want to do, items that would be separate to their account. So maybe it's a point of contact, and they have the ability to submit, let's say, tickets on assets on behalf of members of their organization. So you can see everything in your, that's account based, and be able to control it that way. So yeah, different type of security model, but yes, we can, again, taking advantage of the platform, can manage the visibility and applicability of the data.
Yeah, and we work with lots of MSPs, so we understand the objective there, the challenges there, and the platform is designed to support those. Yeah. There's also, I had a few different questions about pulling data into the system, mm-hmm. And what what those options are. So I know you touched on things like Azure Intune and configuration management here. We have enables and central product. We have other different things that we connect to different sources through our Provence services platform. But there's also something as simple as just doing a data import from a CSV file or something, correct?
That's right, absolutely. So we can you just, again, much like the security model, you can take advantage of the platform, and there's import capabilities from a CSV. You get that advanced shipping notice from your vendor with those 500 new laptops you've ordered, and be able to after massaging the data, it usually can't be imported directly. You always want to have a look at it, make sure it's good, but then use the platform. Or let's say you get that advanced shipping notice, and what you could do, and you can add a little more smarts to this, is use the Provence services platform to process that CSV, and then we can do some additional validations for you ahead of that, right? So that's an option. And then if there's other third-party tools, there's so many ways to be able to do this, but because of the platform, but we could take advantage of perhaps an API with a third-party tool to be able to create and or update assets as appropriate. So, and again, in that case, we would likely use the Provence services platform, or one of the Microsoft provides many out-of-the-box connectors with third-party applications, and perhaps depending upon the tool, that's something we could to look into as well. So many options to be able to affect a change to the data through integration or import, from the simplest of CSV imports to something that's a little more sophisticated with ABI calls and other actions like that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the Dataverse connectors library, right? So Microsoft has a very rich and growing library of connectors that are available as part of the platform itself. And again, we can leverage those as well. So lots of options. So thanks for that, Brian. Okay, we're quickly running out of time here, so I'm going to close off. Encourage you to reach out to us through info@provence.com. Happy to invest time with you and answer questions and do more deep dives around product and all that stuff I talked about earlier. But more importantly, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and for the interest and the great questions. Really good stuff. And look for the recording coming to you shortly in an email, and it'll be on our website as well under the resources section of our website. So with that, Brian, thanks for joining me again today.
My pleasure.
Thanks to all of our guests as well, and everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much. Bye.
Take care. Bye.